Hello, welcome in everybody. How's it going? Hey, it's me. Hi, I'm Halfdork. I'm your guest host, or I guess host, for the SandStorm Meetup. Welcome all of you watching from Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. We are currently live streaming, so if you would like to catch this show and ask your Game Maker questions, you can usually find us Mondays, 12 p.m. EST. Today, Tuesday, I'm filling in for another guest, but you can learn more about the Game Maker, ask your questions, understand the basics in our series here, and you're more than welcome to send us a message over on YouTube as well. If you have comments on those videos, I'll try my best to answer those as well. Twitter is also a great way to watch the stream, so welcome in everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday thus far. So, what are we going to be checking out today? Well, there are several templates to get you started in the Sandbox Game Maker, one of which is combat and enemies. So we're going to be hopping into this template, but if you were unsure of how to get to this section, first of all, you'll want to go to the sandbox.game website. I'll make sure to drop a link in chat. And then there is a section for creating. And on that creation page, you can download both the Sandbox Game Maker and the Sandbox Vox Editor, where you can build your own custom assets, which I think our next show, we're going to break down a lot of what it takes to make an asset in Vox Edit and then bring that in to the Sandbox Game Maker, because I don't think we've visited a lot of that, such as making blocks. So custom blocks, water blocks, physical blocks, blocks that simulate like a building. And then we'll also explore next time a little bit about how to bring those assets in and make sure they're animation ready, game ready. But I'll go ahead and drop that link here. So if you would like to download the Game Maker, this is where you can find it. Sandbox.game /create/Game Maker. So welcome in everybody. Please, if you have questions as we're building along, learning more about combat and enemies today, feel free to ask them. I love to go on these kind of like tangents, these side quests, if you will. And so, in the Game Maker, once you load in, you're going to see your main page of games that you're working on. But then at the top, you also have the drafts gallery, so you can play games that other people have made. And then the templates section. So this is what we're hopping into today. I've also got set up here for our custom, experiments. But for now, we're going to be using one of the templates from the templates gallery. So you can, again, look at any of these tutorials. Perhaps you have questions about how messages work. Each one of these was hand designed by the Sandbox staff to get you started and get you understanding how mechanics connect. And today, this is almost 10 or so of these series episodes that we've done. We're going to be looking in detail at combat and enemies and how we can use that to our advantage and how we can turn off and on these AI behaviors of enemies attacking us. We'll also look at how a health component can make a character invincible, a health component that can make a character respawn, and health components that can make them respawn in a different location. So let's go ahead and hop right into it, shall we? Whoops. So we want enemies and combat. We'll name this one. But welcome in, everybody. I see a lot of friendly faces. What is up? Doing well, thanks for asking. Good morning, builders. What's up, social seller? Hey, Jax, DCL, how's it going? I would love to say everybody's name, but I know I'll get distracted. But you know who you are. Welcome in, friends. Hope you're doing well this fine Tuesday. So let's go ahead and just start playing the game. So hitting tab on my keyboard allows me to play. I'm also going to turn on my overlay here so you can see what buttons I'm pushing next to my camera. So we can see I have a quest to complete every room. Each one of these rooms, we're going to look at what makes it unique. So we have enemies, such as over here, where they're invincible. One thing we noted was when we walked in the room, it started a quest. We can take a look at that if people are interested. But our gorillas here, they're invincible. So we're going to take a look at what makes that. We'll just check out each of these rooms real quick. So we have skeletons that have a blocked mechanic, so they can more or less parry my attacks. So we'll take a look at what makes that tick. But because it's blocked, it's not the same as invincibility. So whenever a character blocks you, you have two options. You can interrupt them. You can see that red little circle appear in front of the character. I'll let him hit me one more time. There's a red circle that appears. And so if you attack him within that radius, you're able to more or less get past his defenses. But you have to get the timing just right. Or you can try and parry his attack. So when you see the animation begin, that's when you can parry and thus break his defenses. And so we also saw when I parried and then destroyed him. So one attack actually caused me to defeat the skeleton and spawn a new one that didn't have that blocked mechanic, which I think is a great idea. So we'll take a look at that one. And so we'll start at both of those as a good starting point. Hi, Hannah. Good morning. Hannah asks if there's anything to clip. I'll try to be very clippable. I'll do my best. But we keep the stream as educational as possible. So any questions you guys have, just know that we here at the SandStorm Meetup are here to help. And we want to make sure that you have the foundation you need to build and build well. The Sandstorm is actually creating a lot more opportunities to earn. So more like build to earn rather than play to earn. Maybe we should copyright that, Sandstorm. Build to earn. So we can take a look at these monkeys here, these gorillas. And these are actually free assets. These are assets that you can use right now if you want to. Oh, Paul. Paul also points out, and I should definitely mention this, these skeletons here, you can break their defenses by using a charged attack. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. I'm over here. And so, with our gorillas, we're going to take a look at what makes them invincible. Well, first of all, we see that they have a melee enemy behavior. So let's just go through everything that makes a melee enemy. So they are melee. This right here is a feature that will soon be editable. So they actually added a lot of room to grow in the sandbox. So if you look, we have a melee enemy and it's locked. This means in the future, we'll be able to select like, hey, this is a ranged enemy, or this is like a caster enemy. So those will come soon enough. We can change who it attacks. So by default, melee enemies attack the avatar and usually like prey. So we can just add that as a reference point. So like we can have any tag right here. We can even make them fight each other if we wanted to. So we'll take a look here and see that the tag that it will attack is an avatar, a prey, and a hostile. And it itself has that hostile tag. It also has these interesting tags. Health components, requires movement, enemy fighter. Those are all default tags. But then it has this one, room for mob. So we can maybe use that for something. Can't wait for ranged. I agree, Slaterade. I feel like that's going to open up a whole new avenue of gameplay. Because right now, it feels like we're seeing a lot of similar games. And that's just because like we're approaching these points where like we're trying everything we can. And so when the sandbox gives us more to play with, I promise you, games are going to be taken to the next level. And it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we can also adjust a couple other things with our enemies. We can make their motion speed faster or slower. So this can be a slow gorilla, and it's associating by the speed number. So all of these default assets, they don't have any bonuses to their speed, power, etc. because they're common. So they're a non-gemmed asset. The only, I think, item I have on this account that has gems, other than, you know, the Gamay show stuff, would be like an alpha sword. So just to take a look at it real quick, we can see the gems associated, and these affect your enemies as well. So power, defense, speed, magic, luck. So power and defense, as well as your speed, which affects attack speed, running speed. These three right here are going to affect your enemies. And so, as we continue to take a look, we can see that it has a chasing zone. So this is how far it will chase you outside of its spawn point. So this being its spawn point, it'll go as far as that green line, so it won't pass that. We can also see it has several attacks. We can eventually adjust how many attacks they will use against us, but for this one, he's just going to be using attack 01. So you can actually customize this in Vox Edit, adjusting which attack is labeled as attack 01. And so let's just say you have a bird that flies and it attacks you with its talons, but then you also have another one that attacks with its beak. Using the melee enemy, you would be able to rename those and see which one fits better in your game when they're finally imported. So then we can take a look here and notice that these characters can be interruptible and they can be block your attacks, and that's what we saw with the skeleton. With this character, however, he has both of these disabled, and that's because in his health component we can see he has invincible checked. So that means no matter what we do, we can't deal any damage to him. So Paul Life Maybe asks, what is your favorite block style for making environments like diamond, cube, or sphere? Ooh, that's a good question, Paul. I like diamond personally. I think sphere is also a great choice. Cube is a little bit too square. You know what I mean? Like with cube, here, let's just take a look real quick. We can see all of these are customizable, mind you. So you can make like a rectangle, you can make like a flat surface, no matter what. It's very convenient. But in terms of like building out a world, I personally enjoy making like mountains with this shape. Or sphere, I'll do like a cavern, or I'll even like carve into the mountain. So I'll use right click and kind of like make these cave-like walls. This is just an example. I'm not trying. But regardless, you can use these world-shaping tools to your advantage. And if you guys want, we can spend a little bit of time looking into terraforming and spending time making these shapes. Touche has a great stream where he is always terraforming his fungi and the fungi fort at the moment. And what he does with rivers is something I would recommend to anyone. And so I won't say too much more about Touche's style. You should go check out his channel. It's hip to be square, is it, Sparky? At least you're not a circle, right? Wait, no. There's like a phrase, isn't there? You know, I'm not gonna break my brain trying to think of something. Sparky, you win this round. You win this round, Sparky. So, last but not least, we can see how much attack damage our character has. So he can deal more damage based on the power parameter. And we can adjust his attack speed. So that's the attack rate. And lastly, if you have a ranged character, this is right now how you can add range. And it's using the attack range. So this gorilla can basically chi blast me from the entrance. So let's just see what this looks like. We'll also toggle the interruptible just to see what that looks like. So we can see both of these characters have noticed me. Also, that gorilla over there is targeting the hostile gorilla because we associated that, but he'll also target me if I get close enough. And we can see he's not leaving his spot because he has ranged attacks. But we can also interrupt him. But maybe not because he's invincible. And so that egg is part of the quest for us to complete. However, yeah, because he's invincible, we can't interrupt him. So I want to just demonstrate what interrupt looks like. Because on our skeletons, I attempted to interrupt him, but I believe, by default, he does not have interruptible checked. And so we're going to come back to those skeletons, but I just want to demonstrate what interruptible means. And we're going to disable the invincible checkmark, which is in the health component. So that way, we can actually damage the gorilla, but we can also interrupt him. So unfortunately, you can't interrupt an invincible target. Okay, so when he has that red marker, we can see I interrupt him. He is unable to finish his animation and thus is unable to damage me. So if I allow him to finish his animation, it damages me. But because he has that red space up here in front of me, that allows me to strike him. And if I get the timing right, aka just kill him, you won't be able to get that attack off. And so that's a demonstration of everything in the melee enemy behavior. And we'll take a look at some of the other ways you can customize your enemies in your game. Next up, we're going to take a look at the skeleton. So this skeleton, I'll bring my pad a little bit closer. We'll rotate it 180 degrees. So it was 90, I added 180. And so our skeleton here, the way they set it up is quite genius, and this is something I would totally use in my games too. Hey, Slater Aid, we're learning new things here. Glad to see it. So this melee enemy, he's got the tag to attack the avatar. So if we have no tag here, he's just going to stand there. But we can still spawn an enemy that would hit us. So as an example, we'll remove the tag to attack, so he'll just be chilling. Or perhaps we can have him like chase something. This might be something fun we can add. We'll have Panda here, just kind of running around. If we want her to run around, we'll give her the citizen behavior. We'll go ahead and make her invincible so she doesn't actually die. Because Panda Pops is invincible, if you've ever met her. And so she'll flee when attacked, and she automatically will flee any hostile creatures. So let's just take a look at Panda's tags. We can see she has a citizen tag. So capital C citizen. We can also give her custom tags such as Panda. I don't think there's any limit to how many tags you can have. So you can put as many tags as you like on a character, as long as you understand, what it's used for. What messages will be communicating with that tag. Otherwise, just use whatever is provided. And so the tag to attack here is going to be our capital P Panda. I always want to point this out because it's easy to get lost in your messages and your tags because both messages and tags rely on the capitalization. So if you use a capital P, you need to make sure every message, every tag has that same spelling, including the capitalization. No, don't attack Panda. She's invincible, Slaterade. Hey, what's up, Roxy? And welcome in, NVGTH. How are you? So, we've got our skeleton. He can block attacks. That was the key benefit, or I guess mechanic, combat mechanic, to this armored skeleton. So he's blocking every attack we throw at him. In order for him to be destroyed, we have to break through that defense. And so we saw that there were multiple ways to do so, one of which was being parry. If you interrupt him, which this is currently checked off, so we can't interrupt him, but that is another way to break a defense. So the two ways that we can kill this enemy is to A, parry, or B, use a charged attack, as Paul, Life Maybe, had suggested. And when we destroy him, so we can see the health component, all it says is negative death delay. So it's important to note that when you have a health component with a negative delay, that means it removes the animation. If you have a 0-second delay, that plays the animation. So they fall over, then die. If you have a negative death delay, that removes the animation. They just instantly are killed. And so we can see that when they die, and this is a new component, the drop component, when that condition is met, when they die, they drop one skeleton. That skeleton also has the melee enemy behavior, which we are currently customizing. Unfortunately, when we are spawning an asset in this way, or using an asset spawner, we also are unable to customize it. So we can see, we can customize everything on this particular skeleton. But the skeleton that we are currently spawning, when this the customized skeleton dies, we are unable to adjust any of these things. However, we can at least give it a tag, and we can associate things with that tag. We can also make sounds play whenever we interact with it. Cool. So let's go ahead and give that a try. We'll be able to watch Panda run away in fear. Or maybe she's just toying with her enemies, toying with her prey. Alright, so our skeleton needs to attack Panda, but Panda is keeping her distance. I think we need to adjust the chasing range for this character. Yeah, we can see the green area as his chasing range. So we'll adjust that and make his chasing zone all the way here. So now he'll be following Panda around. You know what? I could do this all day. I could do this all day. She's net of teasing. Good one, 9A. Yeah, presets eventually escape room artist. And so with our skeleton, he's currently blocking our attack, so this actually makes it impossible for us to kill him unless we jump on Panda's head and charge attack. And charge attack. And so that's broken his defenses, causing him to spawn as a normal skeleton. And because we can't customize the behaviors of the skeleton, we weren't able to add that Panda tag to whom he attacks. So, by default, he's able to attack the avatar, but he is unable to just attack Panda. So he'll chase me, but he won't chase Panda. And so these are important things to note because this skeleton had been spawned using a drop condition. You can also spawn these skeletons using an asset spawner or via a message. But generally, like, asset spawners is what you would use. The drop condition is a great use. I really like how the sandbox set this particular kind of template up. So we parry an attack, we break his defense, and he basically drops a melee enemy, aka a skeleton, onto us. And so now we're able to fight and actually kill this skeleton, allowing us to destroy him. And so we parry the attacks, breaks his armor, and then we can just kill the skeletons as normal. Panda, we've saved you. I'm the skeleton now. Come back, Panda. Well, she's invincible, so I can't actually do anything about that. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other rooms they introduce. So this one's a little bit basic. We can see what they ask. We'll just walk into each of these rooms here. We can see that they just have a small radius around each one of these characters that will detect me as the player. And it's more or less a parkour attached to a combat. This room, I don't think there's anything special about it. Yeah, it seems basically parkour plus combat. Over here, we have the merchant's room, so all these merchants are very mad at me. Apparently we only need to kill certain ones. So this goes back with tagged enemies. We can see that only half of the merchants, all the ones wearing the green hats, they're the ones that we have to kill. So that tells me, like, even if I kill the other ones, they don't really do anything. We also got credit for it. So it appears as though the way they coded this is I can still kill this guy and get quest credit. And I did get quest credit. But it says we need to kill the marked ones, which are these guys with the green hats. So we'll take a look at that real quick. Like a certain monkey. Yeah, Skipper Bros, you could only fight certain monkeys if you wanted. So let's take a look here. We have Room 1 Mob is the custom tag for this quest. And we'll take a look at the quest as well, just to understand what the quest is asking. And we can see that both of these merchants have the same exact tag. So that's what I believe is causing this quest to count them. However, we can also notice the brown hat merchant does not have an indicator, so he did not have the mark above his head, which was this yellow diagonal. So this one does have an indicator. We can see it has the merchant's room objective. So if we go into our quest section, which is found in the rules at the top, we can see the merchant's room. It's asking us to defeat 5 marked merchants. It unlocks as soon as we enter into the room. So room 1 start is the message. We can likely find a detector. And then we also have the quest type as a counter. The counter quest is looking for that specific tag, the room 1 mob, and it's waiting for 5. So when we complete the quest, aka kill all 5 room 1 mobs, we get the quest completed. So what they did wrong here, and it's always fun to find something like this, they put room 1 mob on all of the merchants. So we want to remove that tag from the merchants that don't have that indicator component. So the indicator component, what was giving that kind of yellow dot above their head, it's visible from 100 feet away, and it's displaying over their head, over the entire environment. So we could walk 100 cubes away and we'd still be able to see it. And so I'm going to go to each one of these merchants and remove that tag unless they have the green hat. So we can see there were only 3 brown hat ones, and it was just that one tag that was allowing me to kill them for quest credit. So now if we go back in and we enter into the room, it starts that quest. And so this time we're going to approach the merchants that don't have that yellow marker above their head, so we can see that yellow marker. And so killing him no longer gives me quest credit. It's also worth noting that you can still see up to 100 voxels away, 100 cubes, we can see those icons. And when you have those indicators, you can also see their aggro messages, because that is associated with their entire name. So we can put a name on this and still be able to see it 100 voxels away. We would also be able to see a health bar if we have the health bar showing. So if I attack this guy and run, we can see that health bar still, but it fades out after a time unless you have it quote unquote always on. So we can take a look at that real quick. So each one of these merchants, the green ones, they're all going to have some settings that we can provide for them as enemies. So, for example, we can have this guy as Boss Man Brutus. And so his name will be immediately visible over the entire map. So we'll see it. We can also color it. So this is something a lot of new creators don't know you can do, is you can add color to any text message. And that includes text that overlays the game. So what we can do is add color equals green. And we'll close it. So just the syntax is less than sign, color equals green, greater than sign. Then we have his name, so Bossman Brutus. Then we have less than, / color, greater than. And so what that does is it creates a indicator for the game maker to know, like, oh, this word is supposed to be colored green. And so that allows you to add customization. You can also adjust the size. So we'll go ahead and add another tag, and this time the size will be 24. So a 24 size font. We'll go back to the end of Brutus and we'll do /size. And that will allow us to have a large, almost uppercase. And you can totally, make this uppercase just by Boss Man Brutus. What else can you do? You can do, and I'll add it for a different character here. So we'll pick another green guy. The green guys have the indicator. So we'll go back into this one's name. And this time he'll be Steve. So Steve is going to have a italic name. So we'll do /I to close. And then in front of his name, it's just less than I greater than. So italics. We'll go to another one. this character, I want his name to be bold, so we'll do less than B. And then we'll do Bob / B. And his name will make extra small just for the memes. So we'll close the bracket if it's on the right side of the text. On the forward side, we'll do size equals 12. So it'll be smaller, about half the size as Boss Man. So with these indicators, we can also have the health bar be displayed at all times. So for our Boss Man, I'm going to give him 50 health, and we're going to change his life bar display to be always on. So that means no matter if we hit him or not, we'll always see that health bar, that boss bar. And then for the rest of the characters, we also want to add an indicator just to kind of show their name off. This will be Mr. Jazz Hands. And this guy over here, his name can be Carlos. Carlos's name is going to be yellow. So we'll do less than color equals yellow. And I want a very specific shade of yellow. So I'm going to find a hex code color picker online. There's so many different ones to pick, but just Google search hex code color picker. And I'm going to pick a very kind of like muted, almost like orange mustard yellow. And so what I can do with a custom color is I can replace yellow and do hashtag for hex code, and then paste the 6-digit color combination, which is A through F, and then 0 through 9. So there's 6 different digits, and that makes up mustard, that combination. So we'll go ahead and save it. We'll hit play. So if we look over there, we can already see Bossman Bruce's name. And because of the way the indicator is set up, I'm able to see him from over 100 voxels away. So when would you want this? Well, you can totally have this within like the 20-foot radius, and that would make more sense. And because of the way the health components work, we can see each of their names only after we hit them. So the health component is actually linked with that indicator. So we can see the names are spelled correctly and have those neat syntaxes. However, we aren't able to see them unless we're attacking them in combat with them. And so it's worth noting that if you remove the health component, so with Mr. Jazz Hands here, I'll just demonstrate this real quick. You can see Mr. Jazz Hands, we can't actually read his name until we hit him. So now we can read his name. So again, his name fades out, we hit him. So there's his name. So Mr. Jazz Hands, if we remove the health component, the indicator functions on its own. The indicator was attached to that health component that had the on-hit association. So we could read Mr. Jazz Hands' name. If you ever use hide, so for this character, who's Bob, if we use hide on his life bar display, we'll never be able to read his name. However, he'll still have that quest indicator. And Mr. Jazz Hands is now invincible because we gave him that power. And so using that in combination with the skeletons that we just learned about, you could make some very interesting characters. Like you could have Mr. Jazz Hands here that when you block his attack, much like the skeletons, then you can break his defenses. And then that'll spawn his son, Mr. Jazz Hands Jr. But just some examples. And if anybody has questions here in chat at the SandStorm Meetup, whether it be on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter, just know that I'm here to help, here to answer, and yeah, here to experiment. I always enjoyed, talking about game maker mechanics, as well as learning new ones. So if you have questions, we can explore it together, because you being here live allows those of the audience that are watching at a later date, maybe you're asking the questions that they had in the back of their mind. So please feel free to ask. So last up over here, we also have, I think, a boss fight with Jet here. So we'll be sure to give the health component back to Mr. Jazz Hands. But I believe if we complete all the quests, there's a boss fight in this particular tutorial. So that'll be fun to explore and experiment with. Hey, Huxley Owl. Welcome in. So we can see here, I stepped on this platform and it removed a bit of the wall. And so each of these robots apparently have some sort of mechanic attached to them. So we're going to look at it behind the scenes. So this appears to enable our robots by clicking this button. So we can take a look at that. So technically we were allowed to just defeat the bots without turning that button on. But that's more or less a demonstration of the toggle behavior. So we'll take a look at it real quick. So this number pad here, which we can see is 2 number pads in one of which is speaking in a bubble and interaction. So it says, when we interact with it, all automations enabled. And it's sending out a message called enable automation. This hidden one is basically representing an indicator. So when we approach it, and this is actually a very good use of game mechanics and something I would encourage you all to incorporate in your games. The first time we approach this object, hovering above it, it says the text or title, Automation Control Panel. So this is hovering above it. And when we walk close to it, we get this prompt that says E, enable all automations. That's it. That's as simple as that. However, it also has an interact, which is good. It makes it glow when we touch it. So when we actually touch it, the other number pad, this one here, was accepting the touch and sending out that enable automation message. So when this message was gone out, it went to different things. So this message is going to not only this number pad, but also each of the robots. So a lot of characters in our game were waiting for that one message, and that's usable in so many different types of experiences. So by using one message, you can destroy a building while also building a new one. So that same message can do different things. Oh, thank you, Metaverse Shorts. I appreciate it. Hi there from YouTube. And so we can see here, each of our robots has the toggle behavior where it's waiting for that same message, enable automation. So that's more or less turning our robots on. And so this fake number pad, the one that was hidden inside, it had that text overlaid on top of it, but it also has this plant behavior. So this is important to note, as we saw in a different episode, that plant behaviors act much like a health component, where they can destroy an asset. So we can see message to destroy. It's waiting for that same message, enable automation, in order to remove it from the game, destroy it. It's also worth noting that a plant behavior is immediately destroyed. There's no animations, no explosions. With a health component, you can have an animation and you can have an explosion. So it's up to you whether or not you want that mechanic as well as that explosion and animation. So Paul Life Maybe asks, or says, I was thinking of replacing invisible walls with instant death. How would you stop players from going the wrong way? That's one way to do it. In one of my games, or I should say experiments, I had invisible walls. And Paul, you might get a kick out of this. So I had invisible walls made of these white carpets. So this is a free asset that I turned vertically and then hid them, but they all had an interaction. So they all had a message that when you spoke to it, it didn't display any text, so it's not like you're actually talking to someone. Instead, it sent out a sound effects message. So for this particular one, I did sound effects Snoop. And so then I had another asset, and when I was first starting out, I would often use the radio asset to represent my sound effects. So this radio, which was also invisible but outside of the player's reach, would have the play sound, and it would say the Snoop Dogg messages, because Snoop Dogg actually says a lot of random stuff. So Snoop Dogg would say, where's one of the things he says? Pass me the lighter, cuz. And so he would say this anytime that the player touched one of these walls. So sound effects.snoop. We can also see, and this is just me kind of like testing things for fun. You might actually not be able to hear this from the stream, so I apologize for that. But at least you get the idea. So instead of this speaker to radio, you should be able to even add the play sound. And I noticed that there was a play on player interact. So just by touching the wall, you could play a sound effect, and you could even have like an error sound. Let's skip this. Do I have any sound here? I don't hear my sound. Well, that's okay. I hear it. Can you guys hear this? So Snoop Dogg's talking to me. I don't say that lightly. But Snoop Dogg saying his thing. It didn't appear like the error worked as well. No sound, yeah. I think it's just because we're using StreamYard. But that's just an example. I like what Paul Life maybe did, though. Like, if he's touching invisible walls, it kills you. A couple people, or creators I've seen, also made, like, lava-type walls. I won't go into too much detail, but let's just say, like, lava. So, like, it's kind of like the game Operation. So you would have to walk through this at a slow speed. And then another creative use of damaging assets was to have like a path that was on the ceiling, so the player had to look up and then follow that same path. But I digress. So the last thing we wanted to check out was the boss fight. So instead of actually playing through this tutorial, which I highly recommend you guys all check out, it's in the templates section of the drafts gallery, so you can actually play what I'm playing through. And you can experiment and break things on your own time. But in here, we have all these wolves. And so I'm skipping it, so I might need... Oh, here we go. So he says, yes, I'm the final boss. I'm a master of teleportation. Get ready. Let's go. So all these wolves immediately start chasing us. And Jet's over here, like, teleporting around the room. So how he's teleporting, we're going to take a look at. Because I'm actually very curious on how he does this. Or how the creator made this. And so all these wolves are chasing us, but even if we killed all the wolves, which you totally could, and that, allows the player to complete this how they see fit. When we defeat Jet, whom is currently phasing through the wall. Jet, come back. Jet. There he is. He's still in the wall. But when we defeat him... No joke, I think I broke it. It's very likely that I have to play through the entire game. However, I want to take a look at what is making him teleport. So we can see he has a health component. And I'm gonna guess that he is a child. I am correct. He is in fact a child. So, we have under the ground here a key, that is running away, or in fact, moving towards the plants. So this key is more or less acting as the parent. So we can see it moves Jet around. And so this mechanic allows Jet to act like he's teleporting, and all he's doing is just looping this taunt animation. And so as he appears to be moving, all it is this key is underground with a prey behavior chasing plants. And so we can take a look at this object here, and we can see it is, by tagged association, a plant. It also has TP and interactives as its tags. But we can see, as a plant, it's waiting to be killed. It's also displaying text, so this is interesting. So it's waiting for the message kill, and then it's also sending out a speak message. Interesting. These are things happening behind the scenes that I don't really have an explanation for. So I don't know why this needs to speak unless Jet here. Oh, look. So Jet is waiting for that message, speak. And he says, almost. So he's waiting to say that only after he receives that speak message, which we see is actually associated to a speaker component. This is I've never actually seen this used in this way, so I'm actually quite impressed. But it's using kill, which is also destroying it. So the same time it's being killed, it's telling our character up here to say his one line. And so this is happening every time we walk around. And so our key, because it's a prey, it's kind of roaming around, spitting out the same kind of kill message. So we can see as it roams, and I would love to make like a little pocket here that I can look underground. So I'm gonna basically make a hole in the ground. We can watch. And so if anybody has questions when it comes to Game Maker, not even just combat specific, do let me know. So we can see our character is roaming around, and this key is basically deleting random things. The key itself is also not moving now that we're down here, because it was a prey and it was kind of like roaming in a way. It's incredibly fast too, the way it's moving. What happens if I delete the key? I mean, it'll auto win the game. It looks like I can destroy the key. More science! More science! So that would have deleted Jet as well. But because we don't have the quest, it's not doing anything. And so, we can see here, this key is essentially walking around the room eating these plants, but then it got stuck a few times. So it looks like it might have like skipped a couple plants, and then it wasn't able to find the next one. So that's worth noting. Like, you'll probably want to have plants that spawn if you make a boss fight like this. But this is a very custom, very unique, and I love what they did here. They also had some asker behaviors. I wouldn't recommend putting asker behaviors on this asset and then turning it invisible, simply because that is extra faces. It's also looping an animation. So if you think about it in terms of game optimization, you're adding an extra asset that is not even being used, it's not seeable, and it's looping an animation in the background, and the only purpose that it is serving is to be an asker behavior. the first couple times you make a game, it makes sense to do this, but for the long term, I would advise you to not use something with so many assets, faces, so that's the squares in every shape that you see, as well as something with animation, when all you're doing is adding one or two behaviors or components. So for example, when I first started out, I was using these. These are called lamps. So this is a free asset that the Sandbox made. This lamp here has probably 12 faces at most. All it is like a stick in the ground with a light on it. The pixels were given emissive texture inside of Vox Edit, so there is no animation attached to this. So if there's not a drop-down menu, it's not animated. So just for sake of reference, let's check out this number pad. This number pad, which a lot of creators will begin using for their logic, and it is a great logic asset because it, visually you can see it and be like, oh, that's the logic. It does in fact have animations attached to it. And so, to further that theory, you have extra faces that are hiding inside of it. And so by having an asset with animations and extra faces, you're slowly adding more onto the maximum amount of faces and the maximum amount of animations that your game can make at any given point. So that's why I advise players, game makers, to build their own asset, whatever it might be, that is small or that has few faces. So if you were to make a square in Vox Edit and that becomes your logic-based asset, it's an asset that you'll use for things like the asker behavior. For me personally, I started with this lamp, which is a free asset that the Sandbox created, and it allows you to use it. That's just my recommendation. Oh, Roxy puts this on screen. Thank you. Can an asset have a collectible component that when using that weapon, it works as a tag? Having added the tag and that weapon is then used, detected by a speaker to send other message. Yes, so that is possible. It's not exactly consistent, but let's go ahead and try it because it's possible. So this is something Vvox used in her Smurfs game jam. She had an item that when you picked it up, it told you, like, hey, if you drop this down on the ground, it'll teleport you to the furthest, location where you can end the game. And so she had a whole logic system behind that, but because of that, it was a tagged asset that basically was able to use that logic to then kill the player and tell the player to spawn at a location elsewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up something super simple to make that happen. So I'm going to pick a spot. We'll just go over to the corner. So I'm going to have two assets on the ground. So Roxy mentions a weapon, so I'll use the Alpha Sword. So the Alpha Sword is going to be a pick-upable component. So we're going to have it the collectible specifically. So when we pick it up, it's going to just add it to our inventory. One thing to keep in mind is when you are using this technique, you're going to want to have it as interaction. So that way you don't walk over it and pick it up. You have to interact with it. You have to hit E on it. So we're going to give it an indicator component. The indicator is going to say pick up, just so we can, tell the player, hey, you can pick this object up. And then we're also going to give it a tag. We're going to give it the alpha tag. So then over here, we're going to have a sign that when we approach as the player, it's going to say, you cannot pass. So we'll do detect entity. You cannot pass. And so whenever we enter there, it's going to say you cannot pass. And then we'll have a door behind it. So this door is going to be locked. So the door itself, we can't actually walk through. We're going to do door behavior. And it's going to be requiring a certain message. So we saw that the sword itself had the alpha tag. So we're going to be adding another hidden object here that will have that ability to understand, like, oh, the sword's in the area. So we're having an invisible object, I'm using the lamp, that says a message after detecting the sword. So it's going to detect the alpha sword once we get close enough. And it's going to say alpha.open. So then our sign here, I do want to give it the plant behavior, as we saw, to destroy it. So we're going to do alpha.open. So when we do bring the sword to this lamp, it's also receiving that alpha.open message, telling it to go away. It's going to be destroyed. And then we can see our door here can open. So alpha.open will be what the interaction needs. And we're also going to associate a way to toggle off the door. So I would like probably, we'll come back to this actually. We'll make sure everything else works first. So at this time, everything's set up. Let's just test it, see if anything's broken. So I'll try to open the door. The sign says you cannot pass. I'm going to walk up to the sword, and when I get at the right angle, we can see the way equipment works, and we can even see the center, this white dot, that represents the default avatar, basically as if a character were holding the sword. So you mean like T-posing, you know? But we can pick up the sword, and now if I approach the door, it won't open. Instead, I have to drop the sword. And so I'm going to try dropping it. And unfortunately, our alpha sword was not detected by our detector. Get a little closer. Okay, that time I was close enough. This goes back to that T-pose moment. So, yeah, now we can walk through the door. And that's because we used an item that was pick-upable, and then we dropped it in front from our inventory. And that's because we had a tag. JK, I am happy to introduce you to the basics if you have questions. So feel free, those of you that have questions about GameMaker, no matter what difficulty. I want to help those of you that are here live streaming with us on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. I'll do my best to answer your questions and explore things like this. I thought this was a great experiment to end our stream with. Hey, Lou Yon 1, what's up, dude? Welcome in. Yeah, Paul Life Maybe. I found that out, and that was a revelation for me. I started making my own custom logic assets after that. I would highly recommend, your next game, not the current game, whatever you're working on, Paul, because I know you're working hard on that very fun RPG experiment. But next game, try using custom logic assets. And so Roxy says, without dropping it, unfortunately, you do have to drop it if you're using it in that method, Roxy. However, with your collectible component, you could, just have the normal kind of key behavior that a lot of games will use, where instead of a collectible, instead it is a pick-upable. So you're basically picking up the asset. So it's the same technique where you're bringing it to the door. However, this is a much more difficult and less used method, is by hitting D. So this is a mechanic not a lot of games use. I've seen very few use them. Shout out Vivox, who has used it in one of her recent games. But you drop it from your inventory by hitting D and selecting the item and drop. And so it works the same way as we saw. I agree, Nervex. What you could do, and this is a roundabout solution for Nervex and Roxy, you could have, when you pick up the asset, so when you add the asset to your inventory, it will send a message. So we can see here in the collectible component, we can send out a message that is broadcast across your entire game, and it doesn't have to be collect. It can be anything. So it can be alpha open. However, I personally would take this a step further and have the door announce like, oh, you made it. Oh, you brought the sword. You know, it would state like, the alpha sword has slipped into the groove in the door. But instead, what I have just set up was it was spitting out that same message that would open the door. And so one thing you could do was have like another hidden asset. So we'll use the lamps for my hidden assets. Non-collidable, that have an asker behavior. This is like an internal monologue. It says, you hear a faint click in the distance. Yeah, we'll try that. And so what you can do with the asker behavior is it basically will state this sentence when we pick up the sword. You hear a faint click in the distance. And then you would, you know, allow the player to kind of surmise and understand, like, doors have opened elsewhere. Hey, Vvox, I was just shouting out, we were showing off your technique where you could pick up an asset, and when you picked it up, it was adding it to your inventory, but because it had a tag, so in our case, alpha tag, we could drop it somewhere else on the map. So just to demonstrate one more time, this more or less advanced mechanic, you pick up an asset, the door itself, we can't open, even though we have the correct asset. Instead, we have to drop the sword from our inventory. Right now it's dropping in a weird location. So I have to get, because I'm against the land here, it's actually spawning outside of my my reach. There we go. So we can see the sword when it spawns inside of the door frame, or if we drop it from our inventory, it opens the door. And yeah, use it to... Roxy, the only problem with this, as Roxy states, it would be better for the story to use something non-equipable and use the method to take it to the door. The only problem is if they lose the object. So that would be the one problem, Roxy. So you'll want to attach like a respawn mechanic. But yes, you can still equip it. It's still an equipable weapon. I would love if it was equipped, the tag would kind of like come out. That would be nice. But we'll go ahead and drop it one more time. We can see it opens the door. So everybody, I want to thank you for watching. We are over time, so I'm going to be wrapping up the stream. JKing, I want to answer this question before we finish. Could you make a breakable wall that only takes damage / break with a certain weapon equipped? Ooh, that's a good thought, JKing. So I want to say yes. And here's how. You can basically attach a wall that despawns and replaces itself with a breakable wall after you've collected, you know, an important weapon. So unfortunately, the game can't register, you know, you're holding, you know, like the Master Sword. The game doesn't know that. But what the game does know is that you've picked up the Master Sword. So you can have this roundabout way of explaining that in your story, the Master Sword energy runs through your body. And so once you've picked up the asset, as we saw with our Alpha Sword, we could have associated that same message that opened the door using that same kind of mechanic. And so I hope that helps you, JK. If not, we can totally explore that in our next show. But I want to thank you all for watching. I'm going to be wrapping up the stream. My name is HalfDork. And so you can find me on Twitter and Twitch. YouTube, I'm starting to make more content, but we'll see when that happens. But feel free to reach out, tag me on Twitter. You can catch me live 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time. And thanks for watching. Thank you, Slater8, as always, for helping moderate. All right, thank you, everybody. Have yourself a fantastic day. And thanks for watching the SandStorm Meetup.